Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zhang here, and welcome back to Beastcoast Pokemon. We're about at the midway point of the Regulation H format right now, and the metagame has been evolving a lot, so I wanted to make a video breaking down top teams and strategies that you should expect to see in the Reg H format. The meta will continue to develop, especially as we build towards the Latin America International Championships, which is taking place in the middle of November, but at this point we have a fairly long list of solidified teams and strategies that have performed very well already in major in-person tournaments. Thanks for coming out and watching the content here at Beastcoast. We are really trying to make fun and educational VGC content here on this channel, so let us know what else you'd like to see down in the comment section below. Without further ado, let's just jump right into things. One of the first teams that I want to talk about is the combination of bulky Pokemon like Incineroar and Porygon paired with strong attackers like Go, a ground type Pokemon like Garchomp or Ursaluna, and then support from something like a Moongus. We first saw versions of these teams pop up at the Baltimore Regional Championships where people were using Ursaluna as well as Flamigo, and the idea of course is that Porygon 2 plus Ursaluna is a really strong core. Ursaluna under Trick Room just hits for so much damage and can really destroy teams. Newer versions of these teams have actually been running Garchomp over Ursaluna, and you'll see things like Coaching, Focus Sash, Sneasler being used as well. The idea is by going for Garchomp, you have a faster Pokemon rather than needing to rely on Trick Room, and Garchomp can do massive amounts of damage, especially when supported by Sneasler, which can further increase its attack and defense via Coaching. Go is a really popular attacker on these teams in particular as well. You'll often see it try to boost up its stats via Nasty Plot and go for several Make It Rains afterwards, and Incineroar, Porygon, and Amoonguss are just some of the most consistent and solid Pokemon in this format and work really well defensively as well. So right now it feels like the Garchomp version is really popular, especially because it won a regional championship, but Ursaluna still of course is really good and also thrives on team comps like this. One of the other teams that has been really popular are the balanced teams that we see with Pokemon like Dragapult as well as Sneasler. These teams often will carry a redirection user like Electabuzz or Magmar, and they'll have Pokemon like Rillaboom as well as a water-type Pokemon. The initial versions of these teams often carried Primarina, but we've seen things like Dondozo, just solo Dondozo, as well as Paldean Tauros being used, and we've also seen Volcarona pick up in popularity on these compositions. The idea is that you just have a lot of strong offense and a lot of strong defense, and a redirection user with Follow Me like that Magmar or Electabuzz can be really disruptive to opposing teams. Sneasler plus Dragapult in particular is a really fast-paced combination, being able to outspeed most of the format, and Dragapult when positioned correctly with that choice band can just really demolish teams. I would pay attention to the water types that are being used on this team in particular, because I do think that solo Dondozo has been really rising in popularity. We saw Paldean Tauros finish in the top 8 on a newer version of this team as well over at the Louisville Regional Championships, and on that version of the team we actually saw Choice Specs Dragapult as well. So while most people opt for choice band on these team compositions, Choice Specs is definitely something that you can use as well. Kingambit normally rounds this team composition. Right now what's really popular is the Black Glasses Swords Dance set. We've also seen things like Safety Goggles sometimes being used on Kingambit, and Assault Vest of course can be used on Kingambit as well, but a lot of players on these team compositions like that Swords Dance set. This team in particular did really well at the Lille Regional Championships, where it really dominated across the top 16 teams, and people are continuing to innovate and find newer ways to build with it, like Choice Specs Dragapult, like trying out new water types like Tauros and Dondozo. But overall, this team is not going anywhere, and there's a lot of flexibility in how you can build around it. Moving on to the next team, this is one of the most popular teams and most successful teams in in-person tournaments, finishing second place at 3 different regional championships, second place in the Grand Challenge, a huge online Wi-Fi tournament, and winning a regional championship over in Brazil. The team features Incineroar, Dragonite, Amoonguss, Kingambit, Garchomp, and Alola Ninetales. There's a lot of flexibility in terms of how you can build the individual sets. For example, sometimes we will see Inner Focus on Dragonite, other times we'll see Multiscale. Lumberry is a common item being used on Dragonite. Assault Vest is also possible on it. We've seen Setup Kingambit with Swords Dance and Assault Vest on Kingambit. We've seen Choice Specs on Alola Ninetales as well as Focus Sash on Alola Ninetales, Life Orb on Garchomp as well as Choice Band. The general idea though is that you just have a lot of really powerful Pokemon and a lot of great tools. Incineroar allows for really good pivoting. Pokemon like Garchomp and Dragonite can deal massive amounts of damage, and Alola Ninetales is really well positioned in the format because there are a lot of Pokemon that are weak to ice. One of the interesting things to talk about is that we've actually seen weather pick up a little bit more, and rain was really popular in the beginning of the format and continues to still be really good, but we've also seen sun and sand pick up, and so it'll be interesting to see how this team progresses, especially with Sand winning a regional championship very recently. But overall, This team has been all across the board. We saw it at the Baltimore Regional Championships where Paul Chua finished second place with the version of it. And since then, it has continued to get second and first place at a lot of major tournaments. And so this team just has a lot of consistent tools, and you should expect players to continue to try to pick it up and use it. I talked a little bit about weather just now with Alola Ninetales, and weather really is everywhere right now. Rain, as I mentioned, has been really popular. It feels like it actually hasn't been used as much relative to its strength, but of course we saw it win the Baltimore Regional Championships, and there's a lot of different ways that you can build around Rain. Generally, Rain teams will have Pelipper and Archaladon, and you can of course have more attackers like Annihilape. The Annihilape is often then supported by Mousehold. You can also use Pokemon like King Gambit, as well as the Basculegion or Golden Go. There's a lot of different Pokemon that can flex in on these teams. Sneasler has been something that players have been using on Rain as well, just because it is such a powerful Pokemon in this format. And of course, the general idea is to use really powerful attackers that can thrive under Rain. So Archaladon continues to be one of the most popular Pokemon in this format. We've seen other versions of these teams that really lean into Archaladon. So for example, having a lot of support for it, whether it be Pokemon like Grimmsnarl or Sinistcha to set up screens for Archaladon or be able to heal it. Klefki is a Pokemon that's recently popped up that has been used on team compositions like this as well to also have screen support, as well as being able to, resist attacks that are pretty popular in this format. But of course, overall, the idea behind Rain is that you just have multiple strong attackers that can really thrive in the Rain, and it will continue to exist in this format for sure. Rain teams have really been popular since the beginning of the format, but we've also seen the rise of other weather. Sun and Sand both have been performing really well as well, even though its usage rates aren't as high. We saw a Sun team finish in second place over at the Louisville Regional Championships. That team had Jumpluff, Torkoal, Hisuian Typhlosion, Dragonite, Garchomp, and King Gambit. The idea, of course, behind it is that Jumpluff can be really disruptive, and Hisuian Typhlosion in the Sun can just deal massive amounts of damage. Having your own weather is also valuable in countering opposing weather, of course, and Hisuian Typhlosion is an interesting Pokemon. It was really popular in the beginning of this format, but it feels like its usage has been decreasing because there are a lot of Pokemon that give it trouble, but when you pair it with Sun with an item like Choice Specs or Choice Scarf, it can be really dominant. We'll also see players use versions of this online, but sometimes with like Whimsicott, for example, to set up Sunny Day. One of the things to note is that the online metagame, the closed team sheet best of one ladder, can feel pretty different from the in-person best of three open team sheet format. In my experience, a lot of players, defaulting towards things like Whimsicott plus Typhlosion in the beginning of the format, although Tailwind in general, I think is more popular online than it is in person. But of course, there are a lot of different ways that you can enable the Sun. It doesn't have to be just from Torkoal. Sun is also often seen on hard Trick Room teams. These teams normally use the core of Pokemon like Inity, Ursaluna, Torkoal, as well as Gallade, and we've seen versions of it do really well in in-person tournaments like the Louisville Regional Championships and the Lille Regional Championships. Exeggutor is a brand new Pokemon that's been added to these team compositions that has been really solid, both as an offensive attacker as well as a Trick Room setter, and it can disrupt via Sleep Powder. And we've seen Hisuian Zoroark pop up on these teams as well. So the version with Exeggutor and Hisuian Zoroark finished in top 4 over at the Louisville Regional Championships, and a different version of the team got top 8. And so hard Trick Room is something people were expecting to be popular in the beginning of the format. It didn't really have too many results, but now has recently made it to the very far end to the recent tournaments that we've seen. And so it's something that you should definitely expect to continue to see in the format, but be prepared in particular for Exeggutor, which is a brand new Pokemon that's popped up on these team compositions. We have to also mention, of course, the other weather, which is Sand. Tyranitar in general has been not actually as popular as I would have expected to be in this format, but we just saw Nils Dunlop win a regional championship over in Lille with the combination of Tyranitar plus Excadrill. One of the reasons why this was a really smart call was because of the rise of weather. Obviously, Alola Ninetales has been popular as well as Rain, but Sun has also been picking up. So having Tyranitar obviously can disrupt those opposing weather teams, and Excadrill can do a lot of damage in this format as well. The team that Nils won with in particular had Pokemon like Choice Scarf, Indeedee Male plus Sneasler, as well as Corviknight. So that team very much felt like an anti-meta team rather than a team composition that had already been developed. We've seen some of the concepts being used as well, of course, throughout the format, but to combine all of those onto one team is really impressive, and one basically at the perfect time where it was able to really give a lot of popular teams trouble. The team that Nils won with, of course, had Indeedee as well as Sneasler, Tyranitar plus Excadrill, Corviknight, and Magmar. I'm curious to see where this team in particular goes because it kind of came out of nowhere, and Tyranitar plus Excadrill in general was an underplayed duo. I think it also probably puts Indeedee Male on people's radar a little bit more. Indeedee NDD Male plus Sneasler has been used on hyper offense teams a lot, and so on those teams you'll see Pokemon like Whimsicott, Delphox, Dragapult, Basculegion, Mousehold. These are all just really powerful Pokemon that are even enabled more when Tailwind is set up, and so it's a hyper offense version of running NDD plus Sneasler. The team that Nils won with obviously has that core, but doesn't necessarily need to rely on Tailwind. And you've got other Pokemon that are really powerful, like the Corviknight, as well as the T-Tar plus Excadrill combination. But I also wanted to give a call out to just the hyper offense Tailwind teams that people have been using. We've seen versions of those team compositions make it to day 2 of regionals and make it pretty far as well. And the idea behind those teams is to just really spam with damage and do a ton. Delphox in particular is a Pokemon that I think has been rising in popularity on these compositions in specifically. Of course, if you're using Tailwind, you don't always need to lean into just pure hyper offense. We saw a Whimsicott team win the Dortmund Regional Championships, and that team had Pokemon like Hydreigon, Garchomp, Annihilate with safety goggles and bulk up, as well as Golden Go. Still an offensive team, but at least has a little bit more bulk to work with, and that team specifically had Clefable with Misty Terrain. Misty Terrain in general is a move that people have been using a little bit more, and the reason for it is because, of course, you can get rid of opposing terrains, but you can also use it to prevent yourself from falling asleep or getting affected by other status conditions. That's really valuable in a format where Sneasler and Amoonguss are everywhere, and you can use it to deny Flame Orb activating on opposing Ursalunas. So there's a lot of utility in this move. We even saw it on Alola Ninetales in the team that finished in 2nd place over at the Lille Regional Championships recently. So it's a fun tech move that you can consider on your teams. Dondozo has been really common since the beginning of Scarlet and Violet VGC, and while it hasn't won a major championship yet in this format, it has consistently made it to the top 16 and top 8 of a lot of different regional championships. Newer versions of Dondozo will carry things like Steel Terra on it rather than Grass Terra. Dondozo in general hasn't actually been super popular because Clear Smog Amoonguss is just everywhere, and you really don't want to just, get baited by Amoonguss and then lose all of your stat boosts. So Steel Terra has been a new meta adaptation. We also saw this previously when Dondozo was initially being used and people shifting away from Grass Terra to Steel Terra. The Steel Terra, of course, is really nice because you are able to avoid getting your stats dropped by Clear Smog by being immune to it. And you can also run Heavy Slam to do a lot of damage. Dondozo teams recently have also really been using Choice Scarf Annihilate, which of course can go for coaching as well as Final Gambit. And so the important thing with Dondozo teams is to have flexibility and not rely solely on Dondozo as your damage dealer. So you'll often see, of course, classic versions of these teams carrying things like Choice Specs Golden Go. Palmot has been used on these teams as well for Revival Blessing. Dragonite has been used just to be a strong Pokemon to soak up damage. And then, of course, Annihilate can go for coaching to further boost Dragonite as well. And we've even seen the combination of NDD plus Sneasler being used on these team comps as well. So Dondozo is something that you should definitely still be prepared for, even though its usage rate might not be as high as people have been expecting. Ursaluna Bloodmoon teams are in an interesting spot right now. I think when Regulation H first started, people thought, okay, both of the Ursalunas are just going to be absolutely broken in this format, but Bloodmoon hasn't been, I feel like, used as much relative to its strength. I think part of it is because people just would prefer other options, and Bloodmoon, of course, struggles from the fact that it often runs normal Terra, and Sneasler being as common as it is means that you are really threatened by close combat. But we have seen offensive Bloodmoon teams do well. For example, a version of Ursaluna Bloodmoon just got 10th place at the Lille Regional Championship. That version of the team had Life Orb, classic Ursaluna Bloodmoon, but it had Tailwind from Talonflame, as well as Trick Room from male NDD. So you could use Ursaluna both on their Tailwind and Trick Room, which I thought was really cool. These teams in general aren't as popular, but I continue to expect them to do well. We even saw Ursaluna Bloodmoon actually finish in 4th place over it at the Lille Regional Championship as well, but this was an Assault Vest set. Assault Vest Bloodmoon, by the way, a set that people have really started using a little bit more. I've first seen it being popularized on the closed team sheet best of 1 ladder. Assault Vest Bloodmoon actually won the very first Grand Challenge, which of course was a huge Wi-Fi tournament. But the idea behind Assault Vest Bloodmoon is that you're not going to get one-hit knockouts as easily, but you're able to soak up damage a lot more. One of the problems I was just talking about is how Ursaluna Bloodmoon normally likes to run normal Terra, which means that you continuously are weak to fighting type damage like Sneasler. But Ursaluna Bloodmoon on the Lille Regional Championship team that got top 4 had Water Terra. So of course Water Terra is nice defensively, and with the Assault Vest you can just soak up hits and still get really powerful attacks off. Assault Vest also allows you to run a 4th offensive move, and so Vacuum Wave is something that people have been using for priority, as well as a way to hit things like King Gambit for super effective damage. One of the other interesting things from that team that got top 4 at regionals was Loaded Dice Dragonite. Loaded Dice Dragonite, I feel like I've seen everywhere on the closed team sheet best of 1 ladder, especially on high ladder, but hasn't been used as much in person tournaments, with players opting for items like Lumberry or Assault Vest a little bit more frequently. But Loaded Dice Dragonite is just really powerful. Not only are you able to do a lot of damage with Scale Shot, but you're also able to increase your speed, allowing Dragonite to just further outpace things. And Dragonite's already not like a super slow Pokemon, right? So after a Scale Shot, you can really stack up. Scale Shot, by the way, not a move that's only popular on Dragonite. We saw a Baxcalibur with Loaded Dice also finish top 4 at the low regional championships, having Scale Shot as well as the Icicle Spear. And so dragon types in general have been really popular in this format. We've seen Garchomp dominate pretty much every tournament, often winning or getting second place in these majors. We've also seen things like Archaludon as well as Dragapult being used, but other dragon types like Baxcalibur and Como have also had some pretty big sleeper performances recently, so you definitely don't want to discount them. I do want to give a shout out to Sebastian Rodriguez, who won the Lima special event with an Ursaluna Bloodmoon team. I haven't seen this team actually pick up that much in popularity despite winning a tournament, but that team, of course, used Ursaluna Bloodmoon with Life Orb Normal Terra, and it also had Farigiraf. Farigiraf, a really interesting Pokemon because it was basically everywhere in previous formats, but in this format, it seems like a lot of people will prefer a Pokemon like Porygon 2 to set up Trick Room. That team had Clefable as well as Incineroar, Flamigo, as well as Goldengo. And so you had multiple strong attackers in Goldengo, Ursaluna, Flamigo, as well as Farigiraf. But I still think Ursaluna Bloodmoon is honestly a little bit underrated and underplayed in this format relative to its strength. So that's a Pokemon that I am curious about as the format continues to develop. There are so many teams and Pokemon that are viable in Regulation H. And so this obviously is not a full exhaustive list, but it does cover most of the really popular teams and strategies that people have been using to really good success in-person tournaments recently. The summary, once again, is you have a lot of different compositions. For example, Incineroar, Porygon 2, Goldengo paired with a strong ground type Pokemon, Dragapult balanced teams that will have a redirection user paired with Sneasler, a strong water type Pokemon, Rillaboom, and often a fire type Pokemon, Volcarona really increasing in popularity in those. The Alola Ninetales team compositions that have gotten second place across the board at multiple different regionals and won a regional championship over in Brazil, containing double dragons with Garchomp Dragonite and classic tools like Incineroar, Amoonguss, as well as King Gambit. Weather in general has been rising in popularity. Rain already existed in the format, and those rain teams will have Pelipper or Archaludon with other attackers like Basculegion, Annihilate, King Gambit, or Sneasler. And we've also seen the rise of newer weather teams like Sun teams containing Torkoal, Jumpluff, Typhlosion, as well as Sand winning the low regional championship in Tyranitar and Excadrill. You also, of course, have teams built around speed control, so you've got kind of more bouncy Tailwind teams that don't necessarily need to just win the game immediately while Tailwind is set up. A version of that won the Dortmund Regional Championships with Goldengo, Hydreigon, Garchomp, Annihilate, Clefable. You've got the Hyper Offense Tailwind teams that will have things like Delphox, as well as Dragapult and the Mousehold. You've got dedicated Trick Room teams containing Pokemon like Gallade, Inity, Torkoal, and Ursaluna paired with Executor, which is a brand new addition to these compositions, as well as Pokemon like Hisuian and Zoroark. Choice Scarf Charizard I didn't mention earlier, but it's something that people have been using on these compositions as well to not only rely on Trick Room. If you just want a general Trick Room setter, Porygon 2, Farigiraf continue to be really solid in the format. That's going to be it for our quick Regulation H update as we pass the midway point of this format. So thank you so much as always for joining me. My name is Aaron Cybertron Zhang, and thank you to the team at Beastcoast for making this content possible, and to you all, the viewers, for watching. If you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, give us any feedback for what you'd like to see more of in the future, and we will catch you all next time. So thanks for joining, and see you soon. All right, peace.